Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar about parenting through cancer, how to support kids through a parent's cancer diagnosis. And today we'll be talking about specifically the three pillars of what really kids need to cope. Before we get started, I wanted to share a little bit more about Bright Spot Network. We are a community for parents who are diagnosed with cancer while pregnant or raising young children. With any cancer diagnosis, any stage, living anywhere in the United States, we support not only the cancer patient, but partners and kids as well. We provide support by offering parents resources and tools to help parent and talk to kids, as well as connect with other parents who are going through a similar experience because we know how isolating this experience is. So some of our key programs are Bright Reads, where parents can request two free books about cancer treatment, big feelings, grief and loss. Bright Box, which is a point of connection for parents and children, a small financial grant, virtual support groups for parents in active treatment, post-treatment, parents with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, for partners, bereaved partners, parents of color. We also have connections for kids. So once a month, we have Bright Circle and Bright Club, which is an activity group for children. And this year, we're also launching quarterly virtual teddy bear clinics to help demystify the cancer experience for children using medical play. We offer webinars and parent panels like today. We'll also offer different workshops and virtual socials. We have family resource navigation to help parents get connected to more local or niche support. And our website is just full of free and downloadable resources to help parents know how to talk to kids, answer their questions, how to get connected to support, and the many other questions that parents are facing as they're trying to navigate a cancer diagnosis. So how to engage in today's webinar. You can type questions into the Q&A. If you want to send it anonymously, you can check the box to send anonymously. I'm going to hold questions until the very end of the presentation, but it's totally okay if you want to put that question in when you have it, just so that you don't forget it. We'll also be sending you a link to a survey for today's webinar. We really do care about what you think, not only about the webinar today, but if you have ideas for future webinars. We look through those to sort of decide and crowdsource what future events to hold. We are recording today's webinar, so if at any point you need to step away or if you want to send this to someone else, you will be sent the link to the recording in the follow-up email tomorrow. And then eventually it will also live on our website under the Parenting with Cancer webinar recordings. I encourage you to go there to look for past recordings. We have many different past webinars on many different topics. So, a little bit about me. I am the director of programs for Bright Spot Network. My background is as a licensed clinical social worker and oncology social worker, and I have been supporting families facing cancer for about 18 years now. Before stepping into my role here at Bright Spot Network, I was the program manager at Gilda's Club Madison, where I oversaw all of their kid and family programs. In addition to my work here at Bright Spot, I also do teach at the Sandra Rosenbaum School of Social Work at UW-Madison and sit as the Youth, Family, and Cancer Special Interest Group co-chair for the Association of Oncology Social Work. So that's sort of like that professional piece, but I care kind of about the personal piece, like what drew me to this work. So when I was 7, my father was diagnosed with lung cancer and died. And that was pretty difficult for me and upsetting, understandably. And then as a young adult, my stepfather was diagnosed with liver cancer and also died. And that got me really interested in what it's like as a family to navigate a parental cancer diagnosis, as well as grief, understandably. So I do a lot of work in the grief space, but also just how to support not only parents, but children through this cancer diagnosis. So, where we're headed today. First, we're going to cover what the research says, and then we're going to apply that to sort of the lived experience of cancer patients who are parenting through cancer. I'm going to try to focus on these three key pillars of what kids need to cope through a parent's diagnosis, and also infuse some tips and resources to help parents focus their energy where it matters the most. This presentation is Really for anyone who is supporting families facing cancer, I'm going to be speaking to parents and caregivers. So that's the language I'm going to be using. But if you're showing up here and you're an educator, a social worker, mental health professional, nurse, an advocate, I think you'll find something really useful here to bring back to the parents you're working with. So, to start with just sort of the problem and what we're seeing is unfortunately, cancer incidence is rising among adults of childbearing age. So, more and more children are having to navigate a parent's cancer diagnosis. So, currently, 1 in 5 newly diagnosed cancer patients is caring for a child 18 or younger. That's a lot of parents. This is very striking in that 41% of parents, even those without cancer, say that on most days they're so stressed they cannot function. So, if you can imagine then adding a cancer diagnosis on top of that, we know that these parents are having to deal with extreme levels of anxiety and depression, and just a lot of stress with having to balance all of the responsibilities on their plate. As a system, we know that children really respond to a parent's well-being. So if a parent is very stressed, very upset, very sad, children will take their cue from them. So as much as possible, we know that to support kids, we also need to support parents because they all will play off of one another. We also know that for young kids in particular, a lot of their worry stems from not understanding what's happening around them and from feeling disconnected from parents. And I think that's really important to pay attention to that. I think those really are two variables that have been identified that cause a lot of worry, in particular for our youngest kiddos, like 0 to 5. This is a really old study now, over 20 years, but I still think it's important and bring it up in every presentation, which is when kids aren't told the truth, they will make up something that is usually much scarier than the truth and have a lot of worry. So this research study compared pediatric cancer patients to children who had a parent with cancer, and they found it was actually kids who had a parent with cancer who experienced greater distress. And researchers were a little bit surprised by that, but they realized it was, if you're a kid with cancer, you're really in on all of it. There's no hiding all of the tests, the pokes, the prods. It's very uncomfortable and upsetting, but they're in on it, right? There's no hiding what's happening. But very well-intentioned parents and caregivers will often try to hide cancer from a child, and honestly, that just ramps up that distress. So the research is really telling us that children are greatly impacted by parental stress. Children feel ongoing worry when they don't understand the changes happening around them, and children experience distress when they feel disconnected from their parent. Honestly, when I talk to parents, they come in basically knowing this, right? I think this makes sense. And so they come to me saying, I'm worried about my cancer, but truly I care more about my kids. I'm worried about my kids and how they're going to weather this. I'm so worried for them. What do I do? And so many well-intentioned parents will lean into this idea of, I think I need to protect them. They're a kid. They don't have to, they don't have, this isn't their cancer. They shouldn't have to deal with this. And take the approach of like, less is more. I want to preserve their childhood. And while I understand that intention, I know where that's coming from. Unfortunately, that can either, one, increase distress, but also two, rob them of the experience of what it's like to face a difficult life circumstance. And I use this quote from Dr. Wendy Cecil Harpum all the time, which is the greatest gift you can give your children is not protection from change, loss, pain, or stress, but the confidence and tools to cope and grow with all that life has to offer them. And why I love this quote is because it really underscores this opportunity to face this really crummy experience. No one wanted this cancer. Obviously, this really sucks, but yet it's here. And so, how do we help our kids to feel their feelings? And how do we help them to develop coping tools and build their resilience to get through it? And these life skills will serve them throughout their entire life. Now, there are protective factors. So I think, that beginning focused so much on maybe the scarier things, right? Like, oh, all the ways that my children might be harmed. But there are lots of ways that families come into a cancer experience actually doing really well. So if you're a family that already has some established sense of trust and belonging, have strong connections within the family and outside of the family, you're a family that names and talks about feelings, you have connection to outside support and resources, and you already practice some, resilient characteristics and tools, then you're doing pretty well. There's a lot of talk, of course, about resiliency, and this is kind of coming from a big picture. And as a parent in general, it's like we're doing what we can to build resiliency in our children. And this will kind of this will be a time, this will be an opportunity to practice some of these. So to help children experience a sense of belonging, so a close attachment to at least one important adult, having connection to community, being able to experience empathy, understanding there's a difference between like that internal and external locus of control, right? So what can you control, right? Not feeling like you are sort of a victim to your circumstance, how to regulate our emotions, how to feel balance, how to be creative problem solvers, how to be creative in that, feel motivated to overcome a challenge. Having confidence, which includes a positive self-view, feeling like you can take responsibility, the ability to reframe, right? Take something really a bummer that happened and flip that around, have perspective. And then this idea of perseverance, realistic optimism. So we're not talking about toxic, positivity here, but truly being able to experience some kind of authentic hope, being able to make meaning out of experience and believing in something bigger. Now, we know that most children, most humans are authentically pretty hardy, but there's a danger in that, right? So, yes, I would say from my experience, yes, kids tend to be pretty resilient and they do still need our attention and support. Because I sometimes see people coming into one of these two camps, right? Which is almost dismissing kids, being like, they'll be fine. They're so resilient, they'll bounce back, or not giving kids enough credit, right? And feeling like they can't do anything by themselves. So, like anything, it's a little bit of a balance. It's believing that they can, but also bolstering them with the tools and resources they need to safely practice these resilient skills, and do that in a safe and supportive space. It is strength training, right? So the more we practice it, the better that we'll get. And it's an opportunity not just for kids, but quite honestly, as adults, that we can practice this as well. So that's kind of the big picture I wanted to take about how we're going to use some of this, this idea, this philosophy of resilience as we talk more specifically about what kids need. I think it's really important to acknowledge that as parents, you are the experts in your children. So it's wonderful to come to webinars like this, to go out and talk to specialists, do research, gather information. That's important, right? And you need to filter that through your own gut because you know your kids the best. You're the one that really knows what's going to resonate and work for them. It's important to acknowledge that you're not going to have all the answers. Like they're going to ask questions, you won't know how to answer them, but I can guarantee you that your presence, your attention, your willingness to talk is the most important. You just need to show up and show them that you are there. That's what's going to matter. You're going to make mistakes. I think we need to acknowledge that right out of the bat because I think so many parents are just so worried about saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. You know what? You're going to. At some point, you're going to say something that you wish you could take back because that's parenting. But it's an opportunity for a fix up. That's role modeling to show, like, you know what? I said this, that was actually wrong. Let me fix that. Or, "Ooh, I really exploded. I don't love how I handled that. I'm going to come back, take responsibility, and do something different next time." So, wonderful parent opportunities. And bottom line, throughout all of this, as we're talking to kids, we really want to be honest with them. And I know that can be hard at times. That's hard for us. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to see our kids vulnerable and upset. But ultimately, if we're not telling them the truth, it will damage the trust they have in us. And I know as a parent myself, like that's what's most important. We want our kids to trust us. We can handle and get through the big feelings that come after, but it's really hard to repair the trust. In my experience, what children need when a parent has cancer really falls into these three categories. Kids need safe, reliable, and empathic caregivers. They need open, honest, and developmentally appropriate communication. And they need predictable routines and preparation for change. So, starting with safe, reliable, empathic caregivers. Kids of all age, and I think this can be especially true for our youngest kiddos, our infants, toddlers, preschoolers, they need that sense of security. So, to be safe, seen, soothed, and secured. Physical care for kids is really most important, making sure that you're putting together a plan where, their basic needs are going to be able to be met. That will include creating a caregiving plan and ideally a very small, intimate, consistent group of caregivers because we want to minimize disruption as much as possible. Depending on how old your kid is, it'll look different. If you have an older kid, a teen, this isn't necessarily as important. But certainly, if you have an infant, toddler, preschoolers, and that separation anxiety, attachment, that's a really big deal. So again, wanting to keep that group of caregivers pretty consistent and intimate. For a lot of parents, this includes actually thinking about the practicality piece of, legal planning, financial planning. Even if, their cancer was caught early and, they know I'm going to do treatment, I'm okay. For a lot of parents, they're like, I just want to deal with this monkey on my back and kind of do all of this like legal planning and do my advanced directives, estate planning, whatever it is, because this is kind of a reminder that this kind of stuff can happen. And I hear from parents all the time that honestly, sometimes just taking care of this makes them feel a lot better. It also might help them to answer their children's questions. I'm a great example of this where when my father was diagnosed with cancer, after his death, and it was just me and my mom, I was having panic attacks thinking about what would happen to me if my mom died because it was just her. And I didn't know what would happen to me. I saw my dad died, so that means, of course, oh my gosh, my mom could die. And so it wasn't until she really sat me down and talked about a plan and said, like, well, let's talk about what would happen. Who would you want to live with? Like, would you want to live with Aunt Frida or Aunt Pat? And let's talk about the pros and cons. For me, that's what I needed to feel empowered, to have some agency, to make a choice. Once that was taken care of, my anxiety, my panic attacks went away. Now, that was for me, right? And that's not every child, and I'm not saying you should involve your 7-year-old in all of this planning, but maybe. And that's where I rely on parent expertise. Like if you know your kids, it might be that they need to feel a part of this and making a plan to actually feel better. Social support and peer community is paramount. So, creating those circles of support, you're going to sort of have that inner circle, again, intimate caregivers, but then you might have a slightly outer circle where it's still people that are helping out day to day, but they're not in the house, perhaps. And maybe they're doing grocery shopping, maybe they're picking kids up from school. Really important tasks that relate to the functioning of your family, but it doesn't have to be like inside the house. And then you probably have your outer circle of, neighbors, coworkers who are dropping off food or giving you, Grubhub gift cards, whatever it is, that it's also really helpful and needed, but you don't have to be having high contact with them. Ideally, you're kind of identifying a team lead to take care of what's hopefully your support network. Not everyone is so lucky to have a huge circle of support, but if you have people saying they want to help, they mean it, right? And usually you have to actually delegate tasks to them. People want to help, but they don't know how. So keep a list of all the things that would be helpful, from like big things, small things, things that might just involve money, some things that don't involve money but involve time. So that way you can kind of give people a list of 5 to 10 things of, these are ways that you could be helpful and they could select what is helpful. But this is a lot of management that you don't have time for if you're the parent in the middle of this circle. So hopefully you have, a sibling, a best friend, someone that you can say, tag, you are it. You are now the team leader of the support circle. Please take care of it. And that would be a really vital role. There's so many amazing digital management platforms out there, websites, apps that will kind of take care of all of this for you and keep track of calendars and people signing up for things, streamlining communication so that you're not having to say the same thing over and over and over. So utilize these because really it's about efficiency and prioritizing your time and energy because it's going to be limited and you're going to want to put it where it matters most, which is probably quality time with your kids. Peer connections can be very important to just feel validated in all of this as the parent. Whether it's informally, like getting together for coffee, or whether that's showing up to a support group. You have to kind of figure out the right vibe for you and what works. But for most parents, this is really important because most people don't get it. Even your best friends, even other people with cancer, if they don't have young kids, they probably don't really understand everything you're balancing. And it really does make a difference to have someone see you and be able to offer feedback and share what they're going through and honestly just laugh about it because sometimes you just experience the most ludicrous things and you need someone that can laugh without feeling like they're going to offend you. Kids need that too. I've talked to so many kids that like their peer support group is like their second family and it's really important to them. So being able to connect kids and teens in particular to support is also important. With kids, we want to make sure we're having points of connection every day, ideally in person, but of course, you're not always there, especially if you're traveling for treatment or getting, if you have surgery or some kind of transplant, you might be gone for a long time. So, what are creative ways that you can still have a point of connection? It's wonderful about the time we're living in is we can use, video and so many other virtual ways to have that connection. For young children in particular, that physical touch and proximity is really important. Going back to one of those first slides about children feeling distressed when they feel disconnected. This is most important to those kids like 0 to 6. So, how can you snuggle with them and be next to them, especially if you have lifting restrictions, if you can't hold a child, that's hard. So could you lie next to them? Can you do massages? What are ways to like release oxytocin and all those wonderful hormones to feel that sense of connection, not just for your kid, but for you too? That'll be really helpful for you in your recovery. In general, kids actually do better when you can maintain normalcy through expectations and rules. Because once you kind of throw everything out the window, a lot of times that's really upsetting to kids because that was their infrastructure of like what normal looks like. So in general, it's like, yep, let's keep kind of our routine, our days looking the same. Let's try to stay involved in the same activities that you're doing if you can, understanding that you're going to need to be flexible. And you'll talk about that as a family, that again, we're going to try and do things as we're doing and things that are important to us. And some days we might not be able to do it, or some days we might need to make accommodations and then deal with the feelings that come up about disappointment. We really want to help kids to name feelings and then, of course, process them. And children are, not like adults. They don't really sit face to face and want to talk it out. I mean, some kids do, but little kids in particular are going to process best through play. So give them lots of time to play it out. Um, it might be directed play, non-directed play, art, some kind of creative modality, lots of movement. That would help, especially if you have a very kinesthetic kid, ways to just like move and be active, practicing mindfulness, using books. These are really great ways to help name and process feelings for young children. We get to open, honest, and developmentally appropriate communication. So I think first and foremost, it's important to say how you communicate about your cancer, about times of uncertainty, will impact your child's distress, which makes sense, right? So if you come to a conversation really scared, unsure, um, really upset, your child is going to take a cue from that and say, "Oh, like this must be really bad." If we can lead with some confidence, that will really shift how a child hears what we're saying. They're going to take their cue from us. So, of course, you're going to have all these feelings. So, it's best to like process through that first, whether that's, with your partner, family, a therapist, like work through your feelings about this diagnosis before you talk to your kids. Possibly make a plan, possibly rehearse it. So that by the time you get to having a conversation with your kids, you feel pretty emotionally regulated. Like pick a good time for you and for your kid. Lead with confidence. That doesn't mean you have all the answers. It's not the same thing. It just means that like you're speaking, really clearly and focusing on what you know, what the plan is, and how it will impact your child. You keep it focused on what you can do, not all the unknowns, the danger, what you can't do. Again, keep that focus on like what we know and what we can do. That will help to guide these conversations. You want to use short, simple phrases. I always recommend even starting simpler than you think you might need to because you can always expand. Like start super, super simple. Make sure you're including words your child will overhear. So using the word cancer, chemotherapy, immunotherapy, whatever it is, like use these words and define them. Use children's books. I mean, this is one of the greatest ways to use text that's already written. You don't have to like create the script yourself. There are books out there that will do this for you. And especially if you are feeling somewhat emotional or dysregulated, it's a lot easier to just read words on a page versus having to talk it out. Not only that, but reading children's books with kids, that is typically a routine that you're engaged in anyway. Often it involves that physical proximity. So you're either probably cuddled up together, a child on your lap. So there's that safety and security. There's, again, all those wonderful hormones about being together and connected. And it's not only hearing words, but it's seeing pictures, that it's really helping a child to understand a new concept. In general, I would say avoid metaphors with young children because they're very concrete thinkers. So I think sometimes when we come at something like talking about, cancer being a monster or being a battle, that might be really great for older kids and they, lean into that and they love that. With our youngest kids, like 0 to 6, I would avoid that and just really use language that's clear. I talked about consider planning your message ahead of time, practicing, and really do try to be careful of promises. And I know this is really hard. I think this mostly comes up in talking about death and dying. A lot of parents, in wanting to protect their kids or rushing to reassure them, will say like, "I promise I'm not going to die." And unfortunately, we just lied to them because guess what? We're humans. We're going to die. Everything living dies. Now that doesn't mean you have to actually like have the conversation about death and dying as you're talking about this, but if a kid directly asks you, I definitely don't lie. Don't say that you're not going to. But what you can do instead is redirect the focus to, I'm getting really great medical care. I have a great team of doctors. The medicine I'm getting is making my cancer shrink. You're focusing again on like the here and now, what's happening, what you know, so that again, it's not that you're avoiding a conversation about death and dying, but you're shifting the focus. These are just examples of very short sentences that you can start to put together about explaining cancer. These are often the kind of sentences that you'll see in the children's books. The 4 C's of cancer, these are the 4 things that kids will often come back to the most. So they'll want to know, can I catch it? Did I cause it? Can I cure it? And who will take care of me? So over and over, you cannot repeat these enough. Cancer is not your fault. Nothing you did or said caused me to get cancer. For little kids that still have magical thinking, this is important because I hear this from, parents all the time that say something like, my 3-year-old thought that they caused my breast cancer because they bumped my boob the month before and they worried, they said, "Oh my goodness, that's, your bruise, I caused your cancer." So kids will often think, they'll put together instances to think, "Oh my goodness, I think I might have caused it." So cancer's not your fault. It's not contagious. So you can hug and snuggle me. You're not going to catch it. This is extra confusing when a parent is immunocompromised and wearing masks, or when we ask kids to wear masks, because understandably, then that makes them think, wait, it is catching. So we're trying to be very clear that, nope, I'm just protecting myself from germs. That's different than you cannot catch my cancer. I think it's helpful to talk about cancer or as a disease. I try to avoid using the word sick when talking about cancer, just because to me that kind of doubles down kids being confused about, oh, it's like COVID or cold or flu. We want kids to know it's not their job to make me feel better. You get to snuggle me, you can draw me a picture. All of those things are wonderful, but I have a great team of doctors, and other healthcare professionals that are taking good care of me. No matter what happens, you'll be loved and cared for. Kids really, they need to know that again, someone will be there to make their lunch, pick them up from school. So having that plan is really important. Being able to come back to the plan, whether that's the like right here today or in 3 months or a year from now, and remind them that they can ask you questions now or later. You will come to them if anything big changes. This is a little bit more for older kids, right? But just letting them know, like, hey, if anything big changes about my treatment, or anything that's relating to you, I'll come to you. I'll let you know. But of course, if you have questions, you can come to me at any time. This might be good to also identify another adult in their life they can go to, older kids and teens. Sometimes kids don't want to worry you, and they want to feel like they can maybe be a little bit more open or vulnerable. So if they have an aunt, uncle, a coach, a teacher, a therapist, someone they can go to, that would be even better. So when having these conversations, do understand that all kids are different. They're going to respond differently. Even if you have a set of identical twins, they might respond very differently, and you might have to take a different approach. It's a lot of trial and error. It's okay to show emotions. So yes, I said be regulated when you're first having conversations with them. But throughout this, they're going to see you upset. And that is okay. As long as you're able to take care of your emotions, explain, editorialize, say, it might be that you're really upset and say, I'm just feeling so sad right now. And I think I'm gonna go into my bedroom for 5 minutes and just lay down. I might cry a little bit, and then I'm gonna come back and we can keep reading this book or we can keep watching the movie. Right then, you're showing them you're naming an emotion, you're showing a way to express that emotion, you're showing how to regulate. So, all of this is role modeling for kids what they can do when they're feeling sad or upset or angry. So again, these are learning moments, and that's okay. If you're feeling overly emotional, then this is a great time to hopefully bring in another caregiver, if it's a partner, a parent, a sibling, to help you with your kids. And then, of course, find the support you need because you want to be able to show up and be with your kids and not always feel so emotional. Consider timing when having big conversations. You know your kids the best, like, is this around nap time? Are your kids hungry? Do they come home from school and they're just exhausted? They probably need to like have a snack and, just regulate a little bit, take a breather. You're probably not wanting to have big conversations right before bed. Though I will say, on the flip side, a lot of times kids will ask you hard questions at bedtime. That's often when they are they're spinning and they're thinking, and that can be hard. That's hard for a lot of parents. And something I will say is that I think it's always important to acknowledge your child's question. However, you don't always have to have the conversation in the moment, right? Because you're not always going to be with it. You might be exhausted. You might be feeling sick. So if a kid, it's bedtime and they're like saying, "Can you tell me more about the treatment that's coming up?" Or, "Are you gonna die?" Like these are the big questions that you're like, "I'm not ready for this at 9 p.m." It's okay to say, oh my goodness, like yeah, that's a good question. And I can appreciate why you're thinking about that. And I really do want to talk to you about it. I'm feeling really tired right now. So let's do this. I'm going to make myself a note to talk to you tomorrow after school. I will come back to this and we can have as much of a conversation as you want. That way, your child is feeling acknowledged, but you're also saying, like, I want to do this right. And I will take care of coming back to you. It's not on you anymore, but I'll come back to you. A lot of times it's about expecting the unexpected. You think a kid is gonna like really have a hard time and they're just like fine. They're like, okay, cool, thanks. I want to go back outside and play. Great. And that's how kids deal with big emotions sometimes too, is appreciate that they need to regulate sometimes by just like turning it off and going to play or going to do their own thing. That doesn't mean that they're not thinking about it or having feelings about it. It just means like they need a little bit of a break, and that is okay. Let them do that. If your child goes to daycare or goes to school, that's a big chunk of their day. So I would encourage you to inform at least one person at these places about what's going on. Just make sure that they kind of have like at least the major updates and how you would like them to help support your child. What is it? What kind of information does your child know? What can the staff do to help support them? Maybe there are other resources at the school, especially at elementary, middle, high school. Maybe, your child can have a pass to go see the guidance counselor. They might even have like a support group. So include them in on this information. You also want to be able to have them communicating with you because they might present very differently during the day than they do at home. So it's great that if you have that contact that they can be passing along information about what they see and how your child is doing. If you're a single parent or you're dealing with being separated, divorced as much as possible, you're trying to align yourselves on like how you guys are addressing this and talking to kids. You want to be, again, on the same, having the same message here. We talked a little bit about death and dying, depending on your situation, this is going to hit different, right? If you're someone that was diagnosed early and you're getting treatment and, your prognosis is great, it's much easier to say something like, you know what, I'm getting medicine, they caught it early. I plan to, get through this and live a long, happy life. Whereas if you're diagnosed with a stage 4 advanced cancer diagnosis, this might be a little bit more of a reality. And again, depending on your kid's age and affect and temperament, you're going to handle this differently. So there's no right way to do this. In general, especially with young kids, they tend to do best of staying pretty present, like in the here and now. So for a lot of kids, that's not a reality until a parent is really not engaging in life anymore, where they sort of look very sick. So if you're starting to be in bed all day, you can no longer really, eat or play with them. That's probably the time to start talking about it. But until then, it's okay to focus more on the today and tomorrow, right? So I have a good medical team. They're giving me medicine to stay comfortable. I'm here today and I'm looking forward to playing with you today and tomorrow and for as long as I can. So focusing again on what you can control and as much of the present as you can. Recognize that if you talk to other people about your cancer diagnosis, family, friends, neighbors, coworkers, and especially if they have contact with your kids, that they might be talking to your kids about it. So I think this is especially why we want to be transparent with kids about what's happening because I've heard some really awful stories about parents who haven't, they didn't tell kids yet, especially if you live in a small community. And then a well-meaning teacher or friend comes up to the kids and says something like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear about your mom. And the kids have no idea what they're talking about. And that's how they find out. Or that someone else is like sharing information that you just weren't really ready for your kids to hear. So consider that. And I think that's more just a caution of, as you're telling people about what's happening, think about how much you trust that person, be really clear about what your kids know and don't know, what you want them telling your kids, because otherwise, your kids are out there. And that is just a point of life that we can't always control what people are going to tell our kids. So how often do I hear these stories, right, about a child going to school and just saying, my mom has cancer? They're in kindergarten and their little friend, comes up and is like, my dog died of cancer. My grandpa died of cancer. Little kids, it's like they always have the pet or grandparent who died of cancer. And parents are just so freaked out about like, that's what I don't want happening. Part of it is that you can prepare your child a little bit and say, that right now my cancer was caught early and, I plan to go through treatment and live a long, healthy life. Some people do die of cancer. They tend to be people who are older. Some pets die of cancer. So you might have some of your friends or some people who talk about that. And if that makes you feel upset or if you have questions, always come talk to me about it. Or if you want help in talking to your friends, I can come to school and be a part of that conversation. These are never one and done conversations. So this is just like coming back to it over and over and over, especially as your child matures and has more questions. The last pillar is that children need to be told about changes that will impact them. So, in particular, routine and schedule. That's kind of number one. How does their day to day shift? This is for all ages, definitely little kids. Like they're just used to that anyway. But I mean, again, kids of all ages will need to know, like, how does my day to day change? If new caregivers are going to be part of the equation, they need to know about that. If they're older, they might have some say in that. They might get some agency about choosing who's coming to hang out with them. Hair loss is pretty big, especially for young kiddos. That can be pretty startling if a mom is going to lose hair. So if you know that you will be losing your hair, prepare kids for that. And any other change to your body. If you'll be having a mastectomy, an amputation, a stoma, prepare kids for that. You can play it out, use medical play. If you're going to come home with some kind of medical or adaptive equipment, you'll be using a walker, you'll have a port, an ostomy. These are things that you'll kind of want to talk about ahead of time. And then also expectations. So, I'm going to be going in for surgery. I will be at the hospital for 2 nights. When I come home, I will have, a big owie. We need to have gentle touches. I need to rest. I need soft noises. Helping kids to prepare for that will be really important. For little kids, they just need, a couple of days heads up again. They're just so here and now in the present. You don't need to give them weeks in advance. In fact, sometimes that causes just like lots of rumination. Older kids, though, might want a little bit more of a heads up. Then, you might want to start talking to them a couple of weeks before. Having some kind of visual calendar is great. So if you already utilize a family calendar and you have older children who can read and write, great. But if you have young kids who, again, who can't read or write, using some kind of visual calendar like this one from Mighty and Bright is super empowering. It helps them to see just like one day or one week at a time, like when daddy will be in the hospital, when grandma and grandpa will be there, the days that mommy is in bed resting. That way you can kind of like see it at a week at a time and review the day before, just the high level big things that they'll need to know. You might want to help, especially young children, create some kind of anchor to ground them through these shifting changes because it's very unsettling. So, do they already have a comfort item they use, like a blanket, a stuffy? Great. It might be that you want to find a rock or create your own kind of like worry stone or gem, something they can hold on to, put in a pocket. Maybe you identify a very special stuffy. Maybe it's like getting them something new that travels with the parent to treatment, to the hospital. And maybe they come back with stories and it's kind of that through line. It might be creating a goodbye ritual to help children with, again, that separation. That separation anxiety is really big. So, especially, I mean, that's big for kids anyway, in that, 2, 3, 4 age range. But then if they're also heightened feelings about seeing, mom or dad being feeling unwell and they're picking up on all these shifts and changes, being able to maybe do like a kiss on the hand or a special handshake. Maybe you come up with a special mantra or a song, something that as a family you can kind of always come back to say, yes, things are shifting, things look different, but we're all here, we're together, we love each other. And that's why sometimes even having those specific routines, like bedtime routines, are so important right now, which is why you might want to delegate other tasks because at the end of the night, you're probably exhausted. I mean, my goodness, parents are already exhausted at bedtime, but especially if you're going through treatment or recovering from surgery, how might you be able to still be a part of bath time or still show up to just read a book? Those are going to be important sort of grounding moments for you and your kids. Now, despite all of this, you might have kids that are experiencing a little bit of distress. And some distress is normal, some worry, some feeling anxiety. That makes sense. That tracks, right? But you might start to pick up on like, ooh, I feel like too much is happening. Like kind of like this poem here. Like I just feel like my kid is working really, really, really hard to make me happy. So parents usually know. Parents are, again, they're experts on their own kids. So you're picking up on something is off. So if you feel like your kid has had a really big regression in development, they all of a sudden they're no longer potty trained, they're having accidents all the time, or they were doing really well in school and now they're struggling. They're not sleeping or they're sleeping too much or they're not eating or eating too much. Like these are kind of like the big four, especially for young kids. If that's persistent for a few weeks, it might be a good opportunity to just reach out for support. Same thing if all of a sudden, like your kid's behavior is just really different. They're really clingy, they're really explosive. An older child is like saying they're not going to go hang out with friends or not go to soccer practice because they want to be home and help, caregive for you. These are just little red flags that make you go, I feel like we could benefit from some extra support. And I mean, my opinion is that's just never a bad idea. Like having more caring adults in your child's life is not a bad thing. That doesn't mean that anything is pathological or something to be really worried about. It just means, my goodness, me and my children are having to deal with a lot right now. And so let's have other people help us. It might be a mental health professional. Maybe it's as a family you're going to see a therapist or finding a child therapist, child, kid, or teen therapist to work with them. With little kids, you're looking at something more like play therapy or art therapy. If you have a child that saw like an ambulance come to get you, or like they're having nightmares clearly because of a like a specific instance that seemed really traumatic for them, you might want to find a therapist who specializes in EMDR. There are also really great adults out there that are not mental health professionals. And sometimes it's because, I know that the demand for that is really high, the cost is really high. It can be really hard, even like waiting lists, wait time. It can be really hard to find a therapist. So, in the meantime, or in addition to, think about other caring adults in your child's life that could be helpful. So, if your child goes to school, what about student services? Is there a social worker, a counselor, a nurse? Maybe there's just a really great teacher or coach that can be a part of this team for your child, that can just be someone safe for your child to talk to. At your clinic, is there a social worker? Is there a child life specialist? Is there someone that you can connect with? Are you a part of a faith or spiritual center? There are really great camps and communities out there. There are lots of, local affiliates, whether that's with KESM, Cancer Support Community. There are other sort of local cancer support organizations that either do in-person or virtual support. Wonders and Worries, Pickles. There are other orgs out there that are doing a lot to offer free support to families facing cancer. So I encourage you to reach out to any of these places to see how they can help not only you, but your children. And I want to start to circle this up and say, while this is hard and challenging, and no one's negating that, there are opportunities for happy moments. I mean, this even came up in a group I was facilitating yesterday with parents, right? That which was like, and I'm now into survivorship, and it's interesting to look back and see how while this was really taxing and really awful, there were some really beautiful moments of joy and growth and happiness. And I'm really grateful for being able to still have those moments, right? Because life is all of it, all at once, all together. So some families, when I did a research study back in 2008, said, cancer taught me and my family how to be empathetic. They taught my kids how to be self-reliant and confident. I didn't realize, I think I was kind of babying them. And by me kind of being pulled back and not being able to do as much for them, all of a sudden they learned how to tie their shoes. All of a sudden they get dressed by themselves. All of a sudden they're brushing their teeth and making their own lunch. Hey, that was kind of cool. And kids feel really proud of that. It helps kids learn how to connect with and appreciate, within the family and outside the family, and for a family itself, how to appreciate life and find the silver linings. So I just want to end with this Maya Angelou quote that says, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I include this quote because I really feel like it underscores the importance of showing up for your kids. Because 100% you're going to say something silly that you wish you didn't say. You're going to say, I don't know. You're going to have a breakdown moment in front of them and be like, why am I not doing this more perfect? Like, I want to be the perfect parent in all this. But you're not going to be, because we're human and we're fallible and we make mistakes. But what matters the most is that you show up for kids and that you let them know that you see them and that you care about them and that you can do hard things. You guys can get through this. Um, so I'm going to go stop this and get to some of the Q&As. So just give me a moment here. Um, let's see. So one question is, as a single parent of a 7 and 8-year-old, I'm worried about germs during chemo. My house is the fun house, and I usually have one or more kid friends at my house daily. Do I stop this because of germs, and do I wear a mask 24/7? Yeah, that is definitely a hard one. I think it's of course you're gonna have to decide what makes the most sense for you and your family. I do think that it could be a moment of actually, since your kids are 7 and 8, they're a little bit older, being able to have an honest conversation about, hey, I love that our house is kind of the fun house. And I love it when you guys have your friends over. That makes me feel really good. And quite honestly, that would actually make me feel really great during chemo to hear all that noise and hear the laughter. I would love that. That would be the best. And because of this treatment, I'm more susceptible to germs and getting sick, and especially during the winter season. And so I feel like I have to like make that trade, and I feel like as a family we have to make that trade just for the next 3 months. just to keep me safe. So that way you're kind of addressing it head on and acknowledging how great you in general love this and that it's temporary, but that for like an amount of time, you really need to prioritize safety. And while your kiddos might be disappointed, it is important for them to like learn how to compromise and how to get through periods of change. So that's something to consider because you're right, having to wear a mask 24/7 in your own house probably doesn't feel good and that doesn't feel very safe. Let's see, next question. We have been very transparent with our four kids, ages 3 to 10, throughout treatment and surgery for colorectal cancer. Now that I'm on a 3-month surveillance schedule only, I'm wondering how to best navigate this as they know that no more cancer was detected, but I've been worried about being too honest that they will be checking for recurrences. I don't want them to be consistently living in worry that this will never end. So true. I think my opinion on this, and also thinking about other parents I know that have gone through this situation, it does seem best to sort of hold on to that worry yourself as the adult and to find other adults that you can process that with because it's very real for you. It's very real if you have a partner. Like you're always thinking about that, and it's a reality. But you're right that you don't want your kids having to worry about that. And really, as much as they need to know, it's like you've gone through treatment and now you're kind of just like, again, kids will think you're back to normal. We know that you're not. But a lot of them, especially at that age, will be like, yes, okay, we're done. Yay, back to normal. And that's okay. That's okay for them to think that because right now you have no hard information, right? Like it's really ambiguous. So it doesn't help them to always sit in that worry and wonder when you don't have real data or information to give them. If that changes, if something is detected, and you get more information and you realize you will have to do more treatment, more surgery, then you will talk to them about it. But in my experience, it doesn't really benefit your kids to know that you're still under surveillance. Usually that just actually just kind of like ups their worry. Let's see. I'm just gonna kind of look through some more here. I'm seeing in the chat just lots of information about calendars and schedules, which is awesome. And the great thing is you can make your own, and I'm seeing that in the chat too. Like you can just like get a piece of paper or tag board and use your own, make your own schedules. You don't have to pay any money for one if you don't want to. Though are some really cool ones if you want to shell out some cash. Okay, some Let's see, my partner sings our girls a custom song each night. That's really sweet. Does anyone know of a stuffy that we could record? Yes, there are definitely those. And I'm wondering if anyone already. Yes, someone's suggesting like Build-A-Bear. That is an option. I'm trying to remember, is it called Daddy Doll? I know that I'd have to Google this right now, but I know that there's a company that creates dolls with a recording device that was originally for parents in the military to help kids with separation. But I purchased one of those before. So there are definitely dolls and stuffies and bears that you can record songs. And that's a great idea to have as that attachment piece. Yes, Hug a Hero dolls. Thank you, Ashley. Let's see what else. My husband has glioblastoma and has had 4 or 5 recurrences in the last 18 months. Fortunately, he has no mobility issues, but he does have some cognitive issues, memory, wayfinding, etc. We've been open with the kids about the cognitive issues, but we have not shared anything related to prognosis. Yeah, is this the right approach? We're really just focusing on communicating about symptoms, not that they can observe or impact them, not about prognosis. That makes a lot of sense to me. Um, that would be my feedback. But I think you're doing exactly what makes sense is you're focusing on the here and now, on the symptoms that are impacting them. Um, Really, truly, from so many kids, it's usually more disruptive to start talking, about things like prognosis, death, and dying until until it makes sense to what they're seeing, especially for younger kids. Like if dad like looks okay, which for a lot of kids, like a parent with cancer does look okay, unless they're bald, are not really able to get around. Otherwise, they're like, yeah, this is just mom or dad. So for that, from, in their perception, like parent is okay. So it's kind of like cognitive dissonance, where like if you're like, no, they're dying, that doesn't make sense to them. So I agree that for most families, it makes sense to just hold off on those conversations until a parent really starts to decline and its kids have questions. That's the other thing is a kid might just blatantly ask, is dad gonna die? And then you'll have to decide how you respond to that. I've had parents do different approaches. There isn't a right or wrong, but I think no matter what, it is important to still focus, come back to like the here and now about like, there's a lot we can't control. There's a lot we can't control in life, but right now, today, we're all together. And he's planning to be here as long as he can. We're planning to continue to do different treatments and medicines to keep him alive as long as possible, comfortable as long as possible. And we'll always let you know if things change. But right now, we're just enjoying each other's company and time together. And we're going to do things as a family like we always have. Let's see. I believe we have gotten to all of the questions. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat a link to our website if you want it. There's a link to the survey link. The link will also be in an email that goes out tomorrow with the recording of this webinar. And you're feel free to email me at any time. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you have any follow-up questions, um, please direct them to me. Thank you, Dr. Harpum. That's very fun that you're here. I'm glad that you put that website there. And just so everyone knows, especially since I included a quote from Dr. Harpum, she has many other incredible books about how to parent through a cancer diagnosis and a lot of great wisdom to share. So I would encourage you to check out her books. Thank you all for being here, and please reach out with any questions.